It's meant to be challenging, and absolutely there will be bumps in the road, but it's also not meant to be this hard. It's time to stop and gather and regroup. We can only come to those answers if we give ourselves the space and time to do that.
Andrea, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I am so excited to chat with you.
I'm really looking forward to this. And why I'm looking forward to it is because, one, you're awesome. And two, I'm excited to have a chat in front of your amazing community. And also, I don't know where we're going to go with this. We're just
kind of... It's going to be a really good chat.
Who knows where we're going to go?
Yes. Because I was looking back up about how it was October 2020 when we did the last interview on this podcast, so that we had the last chat. And so much has changed since then. When we chatted last time, This Girl Is on Fire had just come out. And like you were just refreshing me, my memory, you were still at Loose Women. And so you were still there. You said you left that December, which is really interesting because I think that's something we should definitely talk about, is the guts and the courage to do that, because that was such a long career. Like, weren't you the longest presenter, like
the longest serving anchor on Loose Women? So I was there for 13 years. And the show itself has been going for 25, but people have kind of come and gone during that time. The time I left, I was the longest serving host. I'd kind of outlasted everybody.
To have the guts to walk away from it when I think so many people told you that it would be career suicide, like, that takes guts. And I see this all the time with women in businesses, having courage to pivot. And you've not only pivoted once, you've pivoted since then as well. And I really think that it takes so much courage to be able to do that. And like, how did you do it? Like, what was like a driver to help you to make that really gutsy decision?
I think for me, context is everything. So I had started This Girl's on Fire back in 2018, and it started off as an online blog and a place for me to just offer my services to women everywhere in terms of using my journalistic skill, because I'm a writer at heart, really. And so it began in that way. And then I'd started to sort of ramp it up and change things around a little. And I was offering services to female entrepreneurs as well as a community, so that I felt like I was trying to nurture and support the businesswoman and the person, if you like. And that was just getting really geared up and ready to launch when the pandemic happened. And I think now, we sit here in 2024, and it's kind of easy to forget how scary that time was and how raw that time was, and how we didn't necessarily know what was going to happen, what the outcome was going to be on the other side of this global experience. And we had launched This Girl's on Fire right at the same time. Like I said, the world went into sort of free fall. So right from the off, it didn't pan out as we thought, because we weren't playing in the same arena anymore. The world had changed.
Yeah.
And for me, the build up to deciding to leave my job was, I just felt that if this is Armageddon, if, we all know, and I know you and I share this view, Carrie, that you get one life, you get one chance at things. And if this really is our one chance, do I want, to get to the end of my days? And I didn't go all in on something purely because I was scared of what the outcome might be. And I thought, no, I don't want to. I have no idea whether this is going to work or not. Statistically, it's probably highly unlikely that it is going to work, at least in the way that I see it working right now. But I feel the need to do it anyway. And so what I did do was I wrote a list of pros and cons, which is kind of how I start most internal discussions of, the pros and cons of leaving and staying and all of that. And, you and I both, we do vision boarding, we do mind mapping, all this sort of thing. So whilst I was projecting forward into the future and to how I saw the success of what I was doing was going to look like, I also projected the other way, and I created what I like to call my blueprint for failure, which was basically asking myself the really challenging questions, which was, okay, you quit your job and then this happens. Would you still do it then? Yes. So it's kind of like a flow chart, if you like. And then, all right, so the next line down, you're now at this place, and then this happens. Would you still go ahead? And it went down and down and down and down until it was like, worst case scenario, would I still make this decision? And it just felt right. So I decided yes. And the next day I wrote my resignation letter in the notes section of my phone. And because it's TV, you don't know if you're going to hand your notice in, if you're going to be allowed back on air again, because very often it's like working in finance or something like that. You're kind of seen as too volatile. So you're kind of gone as soon as you hand your notice in. So I did what was, to me, could have been my last show. And again, it's in the middle of the pandemic. I drove myself in. I had to have my temperature taken at the door by security before they even allowed me in. We had the full mask and visor on to get ready on my own in a dressing room by myself. That we did our meeting over Zoom so that everyone, obviously all the production team were apart. And then you make your way into the studio. The studio at that time, we filmed in the Graham Norton studio. So imagine this huge chat show room where, it's normally filled with hundreds of people with the Graham Norton show. We also normally have a studio audience, but at this time we didn't. And it was this tiny little desk in the middle of a dark room with everyone so far away and so far, apart. And I did the show. And when I said the final, and that's it for today, goodbye, I gave a kind of Paddington stare into the camera because that could have been my very last goodbye. And then left, and I sat in the car and I copied and pasted it from the notes section of my phone and emailed the head of daytime. And I handed my notice in and then pressed start and started driving home thinking, oh my gosh, that's not set off a whole chain of events. I don't know what's going to happen. And actually, they were amazing. And because I'd been there for so long, it's like, yes, absolutely, make the announcement. We'll do a build up over the next month. And then on your last day, we're going to make a big song and dance out of it. And which was amazing and really lovely. So that was that. And that happened on the Friday. And then on the Monday morning, I'm sitting in our garage, which has been converted into an office. Now what? Literally the pandemic, you can't go anywhere. And that was when I really started working in earnest on This Girl's on Fire.
Wow.
In terms of bravery, yes, it was brave. And I do still take my hat off to myself that it was brave. But I think also we need to remember what the circumstances were at the time and the emotions of the time. And would I do it again? Yes. Would I do it differently? Yes. There are certain things that I've learned since then that actually I would have done differently. But I didn't know that then. So
are they things that would be helpful for you to share, or are they personal things?
No, they're business things. So for me, I pivoted career in midlife, which I know that in terms of during the pandemic, I was part of the Great Resignation, which I didn't even know was a thing. Don't think any of us who quit our jobs knew it was a thing. But there are many, many entrepreneurs who set up their businesses, in their late 30s, right the way through into their early 60s, because they feel really passionate about something. And most female entrepreneurs start a business because there's been a product or a service or something that they've had a want or a need for that hasn't been met. So they go out and start a passion project themselves to try and fill that hole. And I was no different to anybody else. I think the learnings that I've had since then was, one, never invest your own money. No matter how passionate you are about anything, look into getting some kind of investment, first of all. And I think, again, hindsight is an amazing thing. I think the reason that so many of us don't look for investment is because, one, we're worried that someone is going to poo-poo our idea and we feel so strongly about it. Two, it sounds really hard and scary because we're passionate, we're creative, we're all these things. And now we're going to be talking to banks. And that means men in suits. And I don't know how to talk to men in suits. So actually it'll be fine. And I'll just find a way and I'll muddle through. But there are so many other avenues open to us that, I'm sure you've made your community aware of, that it's worth exploring those before you fully commit to pivoting. And then lastly, and I did do this, is to have your passion project on the side before you decide to do a full leap. And I did this because This Girls on Fire ran for 5.5 years in the end. And it was running on the side, first of all. But I think going through that really challenging time where essentially you are going to be doing 2 full-time jobs at the same time, it kind of gives you a much more realistic feel as to, once I say no to this one, can I cope with the realities of what this passion project is going to bring? They would be my three things.
Yeah, makes sense. So obviously you got going then with this Girls on Fire full time. And then what happened, obviously, because you have since like transitioned away from that. So what did that whole journey look like?
So in the end, this Girls on Fire finished in 2023, for a variety of reasons. One of the main reasons was I did what most entrepreneurs do, and they made themselves the bottleneck in the business, whereby everything has to be run by this one person who is sort of at the top of the tree. And yes, we have people working for us and this kind of thing, but it bottlenecked. And particularly because, I was doing masterclasses and group coaching and a podcast, and we were building an app, and everything ran through me, which doesn't work well when you get COVID 3 times.
No.
And I got COVID 3 times, and then I got long COVID. And what that meant was, I'm very much as a do as I say, not as I do kind of person. So I'd be doing coaching programs telling people, know when to stop, and listen to your body, and all of these things. And I was in bed with my laptop, working all hours, trying to get everything done. And at my worst, I couldn't even walk to the end of the street. I was so tired. I mean, just beyond exhausted. Fibromyalgia, nerve pain, body pain, couldn't think clearly, utterly exhausted. And there was one day I'd finished, I had done this 30-day program, a 90-day program called 90-Day Blaze, and it was amazing. And I'd just done the final Zoom, and I shut the laptop and literally went, I can't do this anymore. I just don't have the energy. And we made the decision actually that evening.
Yeah.
Stop, because we had poured all our money into the business. We'd taken business advice, which turns out hadn't been the most sensible, but by then it's obviously too late by then. But also I had got so ill that I just couldn't keep pushing through. I actually needed to stop, and it was heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking for anyone when you started a passion project. And you've gone all in on something that is offering such a great service to people.
Yeah.
But on the other side of that as well is I handed my notice in front of roughly 7 million people. There's not many people. So publicly gave someone, the whole country a front seat to what I was doing. And so there was embarrassment wrapped up in that. And well, it's not there anymore. And now what am I going to do? But I'm a big believer that, nature abhors a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're the kind of person that I am, that you are, if you give yourself the space to let whatever is meant to be happen, it will. And basically, I was approached and asked by a businesswoman, would I consider putting together a media training course for her community? And I literally sat there and thought, why did I not think of this before?
Yeah.
Now it's so obvious that I can take 20 odd years of broadcasting experience plus the coaching experience that I built up over my time on this Girls on Fire. Now I'm really skilled at putting masterclasses together and all that. So nothing was wasted during that time. And now I feel like it's a merging of two worlds now. So whilst it was a painful, expensive, hard lesson, it's taken me where I needed to be. So I'm okay with it.
I love that you shared that, because I think so often people think that they need to find the one thing, and sometimes I think though you don't know that it's this journey that you go on. But like if I never started a business doing phone unlocking, I would never have started the Female Entrepreneur Association, because it took for me to start my own business to realize how isolated I was to come up with the idea for the Female Entrepreneur Association. And the same with you, like if you hadn't been doing This Girl is on Fire, you would have never have had that conversation that would have sparked this. And then, like you said, you wouldn't have had the online side of things where you're doing these online masterclasses and getting to know that world to be able to do what you're doing now. And I love how it all comes together. And I also think it's really interesting because, I mean, this is a big conversation, isn't it, around burnout? And obviously I know that the long COVID played into that, but like long COVID aside, like I see this happening over and over again to people where they're just completely burning themselves out with their businesses because it is full on and it is a lot. And like when I had kids, I remember thinking, because I'm the same, like I can be a real bottleneck in my business. And there have been so many times when it's just become so overwhelming, and then things started to happen, and like my appendix burst, and a series of things started happening, and then I started working with someone a couple of years ago on peak performance and doing like the Dutch test, which is like the hormone testing, and looking at all sorts of things. And then recently this year I picked all that back up and like had full blood work done and learned about did all this functional medicine stuff. And when I went for this, all the functional medicine stuff, he was like, your adrenals are shot, you've got he was like, you've got a chronic immune issue. And there was so many things, and it was fascinating. And he was basically like, your body is constantly in fight or flight mode. Like, you've got so much adrenaline, so much cortisol coursing. That's what's running your system right now. Your system doesn't have the chance to relax. And when he said that, I look back over the past few years and I think, wow, like our bodies can be so resilient, but you reach a point where you can't carry on anymore in that way. And I think that it's, like you said, we have to actually be able to stop and listen to our bodies, like what you said, like the advice you were giving, and like actually then stopping and listening. So I love that you did that, because again, like it takes courage to listen, because sometimes we don't want to listen because we don't want to face the truth or the reality of having to make that difficult decision. And I think it's really inspiring listening to you talk, and also listening to the fact that when you make that decision that is right for you, you actually create the space in your life for the right thing to come through. But if you keep clinging on to the wrong thing, knowing it's the wrong thing and knowing that it's not right for you, that right thing will never come into your life. But it requires so much faith and trust to make those bold moves. And I think even just listening to you talk, it's so inspiring. And I really hope that for anyone listening who's maybe in that situation, I hope it gives them the courage to do what they need to do.
I think that so often we hear the entrepreneurial journey, and it is all about, hustling, grinding, doing 18-hour days. If you're not making it, it's because you're not working hard enough. If you're not there yet, it's because you don't want it enough. And it's a very masculine energy, this kind of entrepreneurial talk. And that's not to say that the female energy is weaker in any way, not at all. But it is different. And I think that as women, I think I do have quite a masculine energy, in that I'm very decisive. Once I make a decision, I don't tend to worry about it too much afterwards, because I've made a decision now. So there's no point thinking about that. I'm looking in this direction, and I've had all those options, but I didn't take them. So now I'm looking in this way. So I'm quite good at that. But I think that when we are trying to empower ourselves to keep going, especially when you're working as a solopreneur, where you are literally like the octopus receptionist in Monsters Inc. and you are answering the phone, type away on the keyboard. I mean, how many entrepreneurs, and I have been that person, where you just had different email names for this is inquiries at, and Jody will help you now, and all this was, it's all you. It's all the same person,
I used to be Anne, and then I was Renee. I've been all the names.
So we have all done it. We've all done it. And I think we need to cut ourselves some slack, because there are so many things at play here. It's a bit like love and relationships. It's meant to be challenging, and absolutely there will be bumps in the road, and there'll be time when you really have to kind of gird your loins and how we're going to, work our way through this. But it's also not meant to be this hard. It's really not. And I think sometimes when it gets to a point where you feel like you are constantly like a toy ramming against a wall and wondering, why is this not working? Why is this not working? Actually, it's time to stop and gather and regroup and think, right, am I in the right place? Am I doing this the right way? Okay, this wall that is in the way, is it actually here because it's trying to throw up this massive red flag that this is not the right direction I'm going in? Or is there a lesson in it that I need to learn to go over, under, or through? And I think we can only come to those answers if we give ourselves the space and time to do that, which is impossible when you're running a business. So very often, and I mainly hear this with women, is our body eventually does the decision making for us.
Yeah.
It kind of yanks us by the ankles so that we fall face down on the floor, and it goes, right, now will you stop? And you kind of have to. And for me, I'm a very driven person, and I do like to know what I'm doing and have my hands on the wheel. But during this time, I had to force myself to almost metaphorically take my hands off the steering wheel and think, I'm going to let the current just take me wherever I need to go right now. And I'm fighting every urge to control this, but I only know the directions that I know. There could be all these other directions that are the right way for me to go, and I might accidentally end up on the same road again, and I need to just let fate decide. And you think you're leaving it just to the universe and all this, but really you're not, because there's 1,000 other things that you've done that have put into action, other things that you have no knowledge about, really. That there are people having discussions about you that you have no knowledge about, but you started it 6 months previously by somebody saw you at an event, or you put a post out, or whatever it is. It's having that courage to just go, I'm going to take my hands off the wheel for a bit. It's scary, but that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. And you surrender, and you then allow things to flow. And like, that is a place that can be so challenging to get to. I know, I mean, it's hard to get to that place, especially when you've been clinging on for dear life. It is hard to let go. I think you told me something when we spoke a while, like earlier on in the year. I think, am I right in thinking that maybe the media coach or the media idea had popped up, and then you were looking for a sign, and then this conversation happened? Like, tell us about that, because I think this is the perfect example of let go and just let divine intervention happen.
Yeah, it was exactly that. And I had let go, and I just sort of put it out there, just give me a sign of whatever it is that I'm supposed to be doing. And that week, an email popped up. Could you put together a media training course for my community? And it didn't feel like, oh, this is it, right at the very beginning. It didn't feel like that. But it made total sense. And this is what I mean by when I put it together, it just flowed. And it just felt really natural. And then when I started creating it, it was fun. It actually was really good fun. And it took all the, like I say, the skills that I had that I didn't really think twice about how to present yourself, how to be confident, how to calm yourself down, how to look good on camera, thinking about, what you're wearing and all of this, how to answer a difficult question. And how to react when someone is maybe not behaving in the best possible way, but you're on camera. Even if it's on Zoom, how to present yourself well on Zoom. All these things that, to me, were perfectly obvious, but I was now being asked to sort of do a masterclass on it. The sort of defining moment actually happened on holiday. We went away, Nick and I went away for a few days at the start of the year. And I had put together some training courses for other communities. And then I couldn't sleep one night, and it was about 3:00 in the morning. And weirdly, on this holiday, every night I woke up at 3 a.m. and it was like this rush of ideas were coming through. And I think it was because I'd stopped working. So I'd grabbed my phone and I started writing in the notes section of my phone. And I came up with the full plan for everything that I'm doing now. I came up with the name, the font, the whole thing, how it was going to structure. When I woke up in the morning, I wrote pages and pages and pages sitting by the pool of the whole thing and how it was going to look. And within a month, the whole thing was up and running.
I love that.
It's mad. And it just happened because I stopped for a bit.
I just love this. I love this conversation so much. It's just, everyone needs to hear this. So obviously now you've gone into this new side, the media coach. So what can we talk a little bit about this? Because again, I think this is something that as business owners, we need to get really good at being able to present ourselves. We were talking in a separate conversation before, and you were talking about how to make yourself interesting. And I think like it's so important. Like we have to be able to do that. We have to be able to present, like you said, whether it's, on TV or whether it's on Zoom or whether it's on a stage, we have to be able to present. So from your like really incredible career in media, interviewing amazing people like Oprah and Beyonce and Drew Barrymore, firstly, can I just ask you, but who was your favorite person to interview?
Oh, well, so I suppose Oprah was definitely the most iconic, and that was the most nervous I've ever been. I didn't sleep a wink the night before. So I never put any footage out of it happening because I looked terrible because I literally hadn't slept the night before. But it was good and it all went well, and she was really professional and amazing. But I do genuinely think that Oprah thinks that the whole world smells of fresh paint and nervous sweat, because everybody was sprucing everything up because Oprah's coming and everyone was really nervous. I thought, wow, she's like the queen. I bet she thinks this is how the world is. But she was super lovely and really professional. But funny enough, actually, Drew Barrymore, I interviewed her with Tony Collette. They were in the UK promoting a film, and I interviewed them together. And, they were probably the most charming. And I'll tell you for why. So Lucerman's a live TV show, and it can happen sometimes that a guest gets stuck in traffic or something like that. And it happened with them. And they got stuck in gridlock traffic in London. And, because it's live TV, I've got people in my ear sort of telling me, we're not sure if they're going to make it, but it's fine. We'll find a workaround and what have you. And I'm disappointed, but quite cool with that. It happens. And then we heard they're in the building, and we're in the last segment of the show. So there's kind of nowhere to go, but we were really happy that they'd made it. And they literally, God love them, Drew Barrymore and Tony Collette, came racing out of their car that had driven them there, running down the corridors with people thrusting microphones up their blouses and kind of smoothing their hair down. And they just ran into the studio and kind of sat down and went, right, here we are.
Aww.
And they were charming and lovely and open and warm and friendly. And there are certain people that when you interview them, you come away thinking, I really want you to be my friend.
Yeah.
They were definitely up there. They were amazing.
Oh, that's so amazing. I love that. But you've got so much experience from all the different things you've done in TV. So what are some of the top tips that you can share when it comes to business? Like how do you connect the dots for people who are building businesses and need these skills?
I think so often we think we don't need them because we think, well, I'm building a product. Why do I need to learn I don't want to be a TV presenter. And actually, it's got nothing to do with being a TV presenter. It's just to do with how you present yourself. And we present ourselves every day. We present ourselves when we pop to Tesco's. It's just part of life. And obviously, social media plays a huge part now. We need to be able to, to film ourselves on our phone. But even if that gives you the ick and you don't like the sound of that, when you're presenting yourself on a Zoom, if you're pitching an idea to a company, or you're asking for funding, or even if you're just doing a webinar for your clients, if you don't know how to present yourself well on Zoom, you don't know how to position your camera, you don't know what lighting to use, you don't know how to, keep your hair neat and tidy. Like, for example, I've got my hair tied back today because it is the hottest day of the year and I'm super hot and I knew my hair would end up really frizzy. So I thought, you know what? Just tie it neatly back. It doesn't always have to be done like you're in a TV studio. But also just understanding the fundamentals of how to make yourself interesting. And this can be something we really panic about because we think, oh, how can I be interesting? Interestingness, if that's a word, is subjective. So what is really interesting to one person is mind-numbingly dull to someone else. Mm-hmm. So just look at who your audience is that you're going to be talking to, whether it's a networking event that you're going to, or it's a Zoom meeting you're going to have. If you're going to be standing up and talking in front of, even if it's your colleagues, how is what you're saying relevant to them? How can you just angle it a little bit so that it is relevant to them? Now, obviously, you keep all the key points and the pertinent parts, but you can always twist it in a way that they lean into it. I like to think of it as if you were telling a story, you wouldn't tell it in the same way to a 3-year-old as you would to your mate down the pub or your vicar. It's the same story. You kind of tweak it a little bit. You make it a little bit more way to your friend and quite proper to the vicar, and then really basic to the child. It's the same thing. You take your information and you just sort of tweak it a little bit so that people lean in.
Yeah.
The key thing, though, is really to be yourself. And I think it's something we all struggle with. Carrie, this is your superpower. You have stayed yourself. You don't pretend to be anything other than what you are. And that is something that everyone should lean into. Not, I want to be like Carrie. There's only one Carrie. But it's, what am I like? How do I like to dress? How do I like to speak? What do I find funny? Am I really sensible? Am I covered in tattoos? Am I a mixture of the both? How do I lean into the uniqueness of me? But just put a bit of a gloss and a shine on it and make some tweaks so that you are professional, but you're also authentic.
I wish I could have had someone's help with that at the beginning. When I look back to some of the first videos I ever did, oh my goodness, I was so stiff and just terrible, so terrible. So I think I think this is really what you're sharing, like just shortcuts that for people so they can understand how they can actually connect with who they really are. Something you just said, which I would love to just kind of dig a little deeper into, was around social media. I see this all the time, and I want to very gently shake people or give them a really nice kind kick up the backside. Social media. So many people are so amazing and they have such incredible ideas to share, but they are so afraid to put themselves out there. They overthink it. They can't stand the sound of their own voice. They can't stand seeing themselves in a video. They feel really awkward picking up their phone and making a video. What would your advice be to that person who is just really desperately struggling to show up and present on social media?
Well, first of all, I totally get it, because even I hate showing up on social media. I find it really irritating. I've got other things to do. Why do I want to be taking a picture of my food or, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Here I am doing the thing. I just want to do the thing. So I get it. But actually, it's such a huge, it's a free marketing tool. So we need to utilize it to the best of our ability. I think that the biggest tip that I give people in terms of getting used to the whole idea of presenting themselves is film yourself on your phone.
Yeah.
And you will hate how you look. You will hate how you sound. Every nervous tick that you have will look like you're shining a big light on it and you've got a magnifying glass on it. But that's all good. That's all fine. So even if it is literally get your phone on a stand and set your timer for a minute and say, right, I'm going to talk about what I did this morning. Doesn't have to be anything particularly exciting. Now play it back and have a look. And what you'll find is that you tilt your head to one side. You kind of have this little habit of gazing off somewhere, not quite at the camera. You probably say and ah, and you stutter. You might fiddle with your hair. A lot of people do that with their nose, do this sort of thing. There'll be all these little things that you do and you'll look and be horrified. It's all good because now you've seen it. So now you just need to work at getting used to not doing those things. So that's one thing in terms of how you look. In terms of how you sound, we all hate our voice. I hate my voice. We all have an idea of how we think a nice voice sounds, and our voice very rarely matches that. Yeah. So that's all okay. But there are a few things that you can do to make yourself appear more presentable, and I suppose give yourself a kind of dignity that you maybe wish you had in everyday life. And it's to lower the pitch of your voice just a fraction. It doesn't mean you have to talk like a radio presenter, but if you lower your voice just a fraction, what that does is it slows you down just a tiny bit. But it also, there is something about us that we tune in really readily to a voice that is just that little bit deeper, because there's something in us that makes us feel this person is really believable and really knows what they're talking about. So those are sort of 2 tips really that I give people. Film yourself, get used to all your awfulness and the things that you do, play it back, do it again until you can do it without tilting your head or touching your face. And then just try and lower your voice that little bit. You're still being yourself. You're absolutely still being yourself, but you're just being just a fraction more polished than you would be otherwise. And other people may not even notice it because they see you as amazing. You're the one picking holes in yourself. But you will feel better about yourself when you look back, and also it will help. It will help.
I agree with that. I think when someone else is giving you direction, it's so much easier to show up and do it when you have direction from someone to, like following the tips that you're suggesting. It's just, to know, it makes it so much easier. Thank you so much for coming and sharing everything. It's been so amazing to hear your journey, and I feel like it's just so inspiring listening to you talk, and I feel like you've given like me courage, and I hope that everyone else listening feels that they've got more courage to make big, bold, brave decisions too. So thank you for coming and sharing that. And what I would love people to be able to, I'd love to leave in the show notes where people can connect with you, and anything else that you want to share, or if you've got any links to things that people can go and grab, share it, and then we'll pop it in the show notes as well.
Oh, thank you so much. And do you know what? I would say if anybody who is kind of toying with the idea of doing brave things, as long as you get it out of your mind that it's all got to be perfect and it's all got to work, it will be what it will be. And that's okay. That's all right. So I think once we take the pressure off, it all has to work out like a Hallmark film. Actually, we can take the pressure off. So head over to themediacoach.academy. I've got a lovely little PDF as well that I can send you, which is just a free PDF, just 50 ways to brilliantly sell yourself.
Oh, I love it.
But yeah, have a look on themediacoach.academy. Everything is there.
Amazing. Andrea, thank you so much. You've been so inspiring, and I love having these conversations with you. So
anytime. Let's not leave it for you.
Yes, I was about to say that. Thank you all so much for listening, and I will see you next time on another episode of the She Means Business Show.